Hello, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. Okay, let's make a start. So again, a big welcome to today's webinar. This is a monthly product webinar series where we are focusing on Avallain Author and Avallain Magnet. And today's webinar is actually going to be about Avallain Author, our content creation tool. So I'm just going to share my screen so you can have a look. The title of today's webinar is AI-powered, publisher-grade, and human-centered, accelerating editorial authoring with Avallain Author. And my name is Giada. I'm Senior Marketing and Sales Operation Manager at Avallain. And with me, I have two of my colleagues, David Moxon, Learning Technology Specialist and Content Developer, and Stephen Madden, Senior Business Development Manager. And in this 30-minute live session, we're going to cover a few things. We'll start off with a very quick intro to Avallain, who we are and what we do as a company. Then we'll go into Avallain Author's project and content management. And finally, we'll have a look at some example of interactive, responsive, and accessible learning content in Avallain Author. And at the end, there will be a short Q&A session. So if you have any questions coming up during the session, just feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll aim to address them at the end of the session. Also note that the webinar is being recorded, so the recording will be shared next week via email. And with that, I think we can make a start. So thank you very much once again for being with us today, and over to you, Stephen, to begin today's session.
Thank you very much, Jada. Thank you very much to all of you who are joining us. Today, for what Jada mentioned, is the third in a series of monthly webinars which we are running at the moment. And today, we're going to be focusing most closely on Avallain Author, which is our content creation tool. My name is Stephen. I'm a business development manager here at Avallain. I've been working in education for about 16 years as a teacher in the world of publishing and now in education technology with Avallain. For those of you who are less familiar with Avallain, this is who we are. Avallain is a Swiss company founded in Switzerland way back in 2002. Making it one of the most well-established education technology companies in the world, and approaching close to its 25th year anniversary, which will be next year. We've a very well-established European-based development team, and although a Swiss company, very, very international in its focus with employees from over 14 countries all around the world. Avallain covers everything in what we call the EdTech value chain, everything from production, the content creation, to the delivery, the learning management system, for example, and indeed the analysis of the students' performance and how that can impact and improve learning outcomes. This slide shows that education value chain very nicely. You see there on the blue moving towards that pink magenta side, blue being the content creation, and Magnet, the LMS, being the delivery side. As Jada mentioned right at the outset, we're going to focus most closely today on author and content creation and what it can do around that. We have a lot of different webinars, and there'll be a different topic each month. Some of the stuff will have been covered at previous webinars, and more will come in future webinars. If there's anything that you see as we're going along, this is a relatively short introduction. Please type your question as you're going along in the chat, and then we'll be able to address that right at the end. So without any further ado, what I'm going to do is move away from the slides and go and show you Avallain Author itself and here we go. This is Avallain Author. This is us live inside in Avallain Author. The very first thing that we see in here is the dashboard. And the dashboard gives you very quickly the first an initial overview of things like the team members who are working on your project, maybe tasks that are due for you. So you see inside here, we've project manager, an editor, project assistant, asset producer, and so on. There's lots of other different types of roles that can be added to the project, and in fact roles can be defined. Those roles have special settings, and they have special abilities and rights and permissions and so on, that all kind of allows you to optimize your editorial workflow. We're not going to delve deep into that today, but just to kind of flight that to you right from the outset. Down here on the side, you'll see a few places where you can navigate to. First one you see here is the work packages, and we'll come back to that. That's where all the learning objects are and created. Then you have the structure, and that's where all the various exercises that you have created can come together and put into structure, as the name suggests, that then allows you to publish very nicely and neatly to your learners. The media library is what you might expect it to be from the name. It is the place where all your media is stored. Indeed, Avallain Author is not just a content creation tool, but also a content management system. We have reports that can be created about your project to give some data on how things are progressing. You have your project settings and indeed the project activities, which are the various activity types which are available to you within your project. As I said earlier, let's go right back to the work packages. And what I'm going to show you now is how we can go about creating an LO, a learning object, an interactive exercise or exercises for our learners. And there's a few ways to go about this. I could simply click here on that blue button, and I could manually start typing in and creating that learning object myself. The other option is to use something called GenAI, Mosaic, or Digital Book. Now, my colleague Dave will show you a little bit more about the Digital Book later. Mosaic was something that we showed in a previous webinar, which will be available for you to watch back. Essentially allows you to take existing non-digital content, maybe something you have in a PDF, for example, and very, very quickly take a screenshot of it, essentially, and transform it into an interactive digital activity. GenAI, on the other hand, is for when you want to create something new from scratch. And that's what we're going to focus on over the next few minutes. So I'm going to click here on Create with the GenAI. And I'm going to be able to use here AI to create a first draft, an initial lesson, which then I will be able to edit afterwards. Because, of course, we can use AI to create the things, but at the end of it, a human has to be in the loop and in charge and responsible for making the changes. So I'm going to show you how this works and how this massively speeds up the publishing process. I'm going to create a generation new lesson. I'm going to give it a title. I'm going to call it Small Talk at Work. I'm going to say, okay, let's give me 4 activities on this. And then I'm going to enter a simple prompt. The prompt that I have for this one says, create activities for learners to help them learn about the role of small talk in business and practice the most important vocabulary. It's pretty straightforward prompt. I want to do something around the world of the role of business language learning for business, and that's my initial prompt. Now I can decide to use a file to help guide the output here. I can toggle that on or off to give extra context to the prompting, but for now I'm going to leave that blank for the purpose of this demo. I then can go in here to the learner profile and give it a bit more information about who exactly these activities are supposed to be for. So for this one, it really ought to be adults. So I'm going to suggest 18 plus. And because this one is also in the area of language learning, I'm going to select a CEFR, Common European Framework or Reference level. This goes from A1 beginner to C2 proficient, near native speaker. So for this particular activity, I'm going to go with a B1 level. That makes sense. This is my prompt. I need to tell it what sort of activities I'd like it to create. So very first, I would like to have something called a presentation activity. Essentially, this would be the introduction to the students rather than throwing them in at the deep end. This will set a little bit of context about it, and you'll see exactly what I mean in the moment. For each of these activities, I can add in some media, a video, it could be an audio, or it could be a picture. I'm going to add in this one I have here already. I'm going to insert that. You'll see it in a moment. Now, it's not necessary. You don't have to add these in, particularly when you're in the drafting stage, but I wanted to show it to you now just so you are aware of the functionality. I set four activities. The first one's the presenting. The second one then would be, let's say, a gap fill drop down. How many questions would I like? I think four should be okay for this one. I'm not going to add any pictures or other media. And then for the next one, I think it would make sense to do a linking activity that could work nicely. And very finally, let's do a crossword for the very final activity. And just as you see there in that drop down, you just get an idea of the variety of different activity types that can be created in this way. It's quite impressive. So I'm set up and I'm going to click on submit here. And this will take about 30 to 60 seconds to create these activities that I have asked it to create. So you'll be able to see how quickly you can go from having an idea on a very kind of simple, straightforward prompt to be able to create something which is very close to being able to be shared with the students. So it has created the four activities. What I'm going to do is have a look at it and see what it looks like. And I'll show you in a moment how you can use these edit buttons to make any changes that you'd like to make. But I'm going to click here on the preview button so you all get to see how this looks at. Now, initially, I asked it to create a presentation activity. So this is the introduction, which you can see here on the screen, and it's come up with all of this about small talk plays an important role in business and so on. So it's created that, which I can review. I'm going to move on to show you the interactive exercises we asked it to create. The first one was a gap fill drop down, and it's done that. In a business meeting, small talk is usually used to build relationships. Floating topics is for the weather, and the rest I'm just going to randomly select for the answers. Moving on to the next activity, I'd asked it to create a linking exercise. So you see that here. Match the questions with the correct responses. And we have various ones here. Have you worked on similar projects before? What would be a good response? No, it's my first time, and so on. I'm going to just select random ones here. I don't think it's particularly interesting for you to just watch me complete exercises here. So I'll keep going on, and you'll see right at the end how much I get right out of all of these. Solving the crossword clue. This is the last one that we asked them to create, which was a crossword. And the very first one here is a popular small talk topic, and I'm going to guess that that is weather. And I'm not going to do the rest of them, but you can see that they're there. By the way, there is the ability right up here at the top to adjust and see how this is going to render in other formats. Right now, we're seeing it on a tablet. I click here, we can see exactly what that looks like in a mobile, which is a really nice way of getting that initial view of how things will look in different settings. So I've created those, and I've got 5 out of 14, which is not too bad. But the purpose of this really was not for me to do the exercises, but it was for you to be able to see how quickly it's possible to go from having these initial prompts to having some really good exercises to go. I'm going to come back out of the preview mode and, as I say, show you how you can make some adjustments. So you've had a look through that and you say, okay, that looks good, but there's some changes for me to make. Perhaps you have some internal style guides about certain words that you want to use or don't want to use that is appearing. So it's very easy to come in here, click on this edit button and start making any changes that you want to make. So let's say, for example, I see this phrase here. It is a light, casual conversation people use. I'm going to change the word casual to informal. Okay. Why do I want to use the word informal instead? Maybe that's a word that appeared on a word list in an earlier chapter and you want to do some consolidation, or perhaps it's something in line with your style guide. And I'm going to save that. And now when I made that change and we look at the exercise again, that change I made from being casual to informal will appear there. So the thing to take away from this is that we can use the AI in here in Author, and we can use it to create the drafts, but we still are the humans at the center of all of this who have the ability to make the changes, make the adjustments, and make sure that it is to the standards that we want it to be for the learners. Finally, just to show you the way that it's very, very easy and intuitive to make changes to the learning objects that you have and kind of move it around and put them into different formats. Here you see a list of various learning objects that have been previously created. I could select all of these together, or I could select them individually. And once I do that, there's a whole list of actions that you see that are available here. I can publish them, I could copy them, put them into a different project. As you can see, rename, I can lock them. There's lots of things that can be done there. I can edit the metadata, which is quite a nice feature. So if I want to tag an activity as being related to a certain skill, for example, vocabulary or grammar or speaking or something like that, then the activities can be tagged with that metadata. And then when the learners do it and it comes to the analysis portion, you'll be able to see how the learners are doing across the various skills that are there. You also have the ability to delete things and copy, and that can all be done for all of these in bulk, or it can be done individually for all these different learning activities or learning objects or activities, as you might call them. Now, of course, this works not just, I mean, I showed an example there from the world of language learning, but I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Dave Moxon, who's going to take you through more examples of the great type of activities that can be created right across different educational contexts. Dave.
Thank you, Stephen. Let me just share my screen if I can. Okay. Okay. I hope you can see my screen. So Stephen was showing you Gen AI, and how AI can help you create your activities, your learning objects, we call them. We're going to look at the more traditional activities that were created not using AI. And I'll just give you a sample of some of the activity types that you can use in Author. So one of the great things about Author is the number of activity types that exist. Many authoring tools only have 5, 6, 7 different types, the standard ones, but Author has over 50 now different activity types that you can use. And a lot of them are specifically designed for certain educational sectors. And Stephen was looking at language. Let's look at a couple more language LOs. Now it's here. I can preview in a new tab, but I've actually got it open to save a little bit of time. This is the dialogue activity type. It's a great activity type to help students with their speaking. Here we have a situation where we have a receptionist and a guest, but it could be any kind of dialogue, of course. You can customize. It could be passport control. It could be an interviewer, interviewee. And the student decides which role they want to practice. They can then listen, and I haven't been able to get the sound sharing, so you'll have to take my word for it, but they can listen to the person and then record themselves. And in fact, I'll do that now. You won't be able to hear this, but I can actually hear the person speaking. I can record myself. Good evening. Welcome to the Sunrise Hotel. How can I assist you today? And I click stop, and then I'll have that recording that I can listen to myself. So I can actually compare the original voice with my voice. I can then listen to what the guest says, and then I can continue recording the next part of the dialogue. And when I'm finished, I can click on this play dialogue button right at the bottom of the activity, and I can hear everything. So my voice for the receptionist and the original voice for the guest. So it's quite fun. It's quite satisfying when you finish. And if you want to practice the other role, then you simply click guest, and now you have the same activity, but this time recording the words of the guest. So it's a nice little activity. You have the option to let students download the MP3 file, and it's very easy to set up. So that's one activity type, which is quite unique for language learning. Another one I'm going to show you is called pronunciation. Now, this one actually does use AI a little bit. You can set this up extremely easily. you identify the words that you want students to practice, and you actually put the words in brackets, and that's it. And then obviously you can add your introduction, your images, but it's extremely easy to set up. It uses Google to monitor, but then it uses another external tool to actually evaluate the pronunciation. And I'm not going to be able to demo, but I'll try and demo. So I'm going to record sheep, and let's see if I can say it correctly. Sheep. So I think I started before the buzzer went. Yeah, I did. Let me try one more. So I didn't do very well because it didn't record. Let me try one more time. Sheep. And this time I did it a lot better. I got 82%, and the word goes green. Now, this activity type can be customized. You can get rid of that score. So just the word goes green. You can actually define at what level the word goes green. So you can make it more or less demanding, as it were, as an exercise. So for beginners, maybe you don't want it to be so hard. But it's a really nice and very easy activity type to set up. Again, unique to author and great for language courses. Okay, let's move on to another one. This is for K-12, teaching at schools, not language orientated. This is just talking about the water cycle in this instance. It's a very simple ordering activity type called sequence, and the student simply just moves those around. Now, you can actually set how these are moved, either by dragging, as we see here, or you can have them click, and then the little arrows appear, and you can move them up and down. What's nice about this activity type is that you don't have to stick to text. You can add animations, as we've done here, or video or audio. So there's a lot of things you can do. You can also use sequencing to mix up words. So coming back to language teaching, you can have words in a sentence and put the words in the right order, and just the audio. So the audio plays in the right order. So that's a very simple activity type which can be used effectively. Looking at STEM, so also at schools, we have activity types that link with external tools, one of which is called Wirus, which allows you to use quite complex mathematical notation, and even allows the student to draw graphs and actually create equations directly in the activity type. So that's a very nice one. This is quite a simple one where we simply have to put the answer, which you probably do actually with a simple type in. But this particular activity type does actually look at the maths and analyzes the maths. And if I click submit, I should get that one right. Okay, so that's an example of how you can have very sophisticated and elaborate mathematics in Author, where Author actually looks at the equations, and behind the scenes there are variables which you can tell it to perform, as it were, to check that the student is putting the right answer. Another one, this is in vocational training. It's called highlighting. We have an introduction at the top, we have some text at the bottom, and the student in this particular case has to decide whether these phrases are about before using the electrical equipment, reporting a problem, or safe use, and you simply choose what you think. So keep cables away from water and hot surfaces. That sounds like it's a safe use thing, and we can check our answers, and hopefully I've got that one right. So that's a highlighting. Again, can be used in all sorts of situations. Finally, today I'm going to show you the digital book. And as Stephen said, I think we're going to have one whole session talking about the digital book. I believe it's the next session, and we'll look at how these are created. But let's have a very quick look now. In fact, I'm not on the first page. This is effectively a PDF that you import into Author, and it creates a digital book. And so students can go through it, and you have a number of different options. We can have a double page view. So if I go on to the next page, we should see a couple of pages. You've got lots of accessibility options, and that's something I didn't mention for the other activities. All our activity types are fully accessible. So that means you can use screen readers, you can use the shortcuts on your keyboard, what have you. So they're fully accessible, and also they're fully responsive. So they're designed to be used on any device. You don't need to create one that works for desktop, or one that works for laptop, and one that works for mobile. They all adapt automatically. And sometimes it actually means that the activity type might change in behavior because doing something on a desktop is not the same as doing it on the mobile. But that's all done for you. You don't have to worry about that. We have a number of annotations that you can use in the digital book. So you can write in the digital book, and what you write will actually be saved. In fact, that's not what I wanted to do. Let's try another one. Where's the pen? What you write is saved and can be looked at by the student. Now, what I've inadvertently done is launch a hotspot, because this is what makes digital books very interesting, is that you can add hotspots on top of the PDF, and you can link to learning objects, the ones we've just been looking at. So if I click on this first one here, we're going to have, this looks like a gap, what we call a gap fill drag. We have to drag or place the phrases in the right area. And we've got a number of different ones here. This is another one. Let's have a look at this one. This is a free writing activity type. You can also have hotspots that link to media. So here we have a video, and I think on the next page we have an audio. You can have hotspots to external websites. There's the audio playing at the top. You have hotspots to different pages. So you can really make a nice, sophisticated book experience. The course is in a book and not in your regular menu that you have for standard courses. So that's all I really wanted to show you today. I think I'm going to hand back to Stephen.
Thank you very much, David. It's really great to see the sort of breadth and the different types of activities that are there and how they can be applied to so many different contexts. So just to kind of wrap things up, we've seen today in terms of what Avallain Author is capable of doing. It's a project and a management tool. So you can create your context, but also has those project management features in it. We saw those AI power tools. The one that we looked at today was Gen AI, so creating brand new content from scratch, using some very, very simple prompts, but still having the ability to make the edits and the adjustments to it. We saw then from Dave how the different activities can be applied to so many different types of educational and learning contexts. And as we touched on at certain points as well, the sort of responsibility and the accessibility of these. We saw, for example, when we switched from seeing how it was at a tablet to how it was on a mobile phone, there's also a desktop option in there. And I'm sure in further webinars, we will be looking more at those accessibility options. At this point, we like to see if people have put some messages into the chat. If you haven't, this is an opportunity for you to type it in now. And as you're getting ready to type as well, just to let you know, I'll be attending the Frankfurt Book Fair this October. So if any of you out there are also attending the Frankfurt Book Fair, there's a link in the chat there, and you can click at it, and we can set up a meeting to talk about what we've seen today or anything else from Avallain. So that's a nice way of doing it for you, or indeed any of your colleagues who might be joining. Feel free to pass that on. Okay, Jada, did anything come in on the chat there?
Yes, we do have something. Okay. So just to say that as you just mentioned, I dropped the link in the chat. So in case anybody wants to book a meeting with Stephen for the Frankfurt Book Fair, you can do it there. And in terms of questions, I can see that we have one that is asking, to what extent is author pedagogically anchored? And I think they are referencing Teachermatic in bracket. Maybe it's probably is related to the CEFR and the language teaching context that we have seen with the two different activities and the Gen AI example, I believe. So I don't know, Dave or Stephen, who wants to take this question?
Yeah, maybe Dave, you're best placed to take that one, because I'm not entirely sure I've understood what you mean by the pedagogically anchored and the reference to Teachermatic. I haven't. Yeah.
Well, I mean, my understanding is, to what extent is author designed for teachers, perhaps, and to what extent we are making sure that it is pedagogically sound. Certainly with Gen AI, which is the AI part of Author, we have, as Jade was saying, we do have the CFR. So we're able to decide the level of the content based on the CFR level and also the age. For Author itself, of course, that is for the authors to decide how they're going to use the tools. We don't actually, have any influence on what content you produce. What we do is create tools which we think, or which we believe, and which we know to some extent because clients get back to us, that will be useful for teachers. And where we do use AI, we definitely make sure that they are pedagogically sound and we use the best tools. And I'm thinking about Speech Ace, for example, which is one of the tools we use for pronunciation, which is highly referenced and does give very sound feedback. I think that's how I would answer. Steve, I don't know if you've got anything.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. Ultimately is for the authors of the content to create it themselves. There's no, as you say, kind of forcing of a certain pedagogical approach. It is flexible in the sense that various pedagogies can be applied to it.
Yes, exactly. We do have another question that is asking about validation and is what validation happens between the LLM generating the content and that content being accepted into the LO. Is validation rule-based, performed by another AI step, or depending on human review?
So there is an initial check on what's coming back to make sure there's not harmful content and so on, or very, very inappropriate content. That's the first step that happens with all our AI products, and that's generally in line with our approach to AI in Avallain. At the same time, yes, human review is crucial, and we would always say that. And that was even why we were showing that earlier, how you can go in and do the editing. It also picks the answers and stuff like that. That's one of those ones where it still is important for a writer or an editor to have a look through and make sure that the answers are correct that they're coming up with. And it is important for us generally in our approach for AI that the human does stay in the loop and the human is using this as a tool, as an assistant, and not as sort of a one shot. Let's press the button and see the content. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, exactly.
Robert,
It's part of our framework of Avalanche intelligence for the responsible use of AI to have always the human in the loop. And I think we can just finish with one more question. And the question is again about CEFR, as it's a hot topic, especially when we're talking about language teaching. The question is, do we need to use CEFR checker to make sure the activities are suitable?
So there is there is the ability within the DNI to use. You probably would have seen that on the screen, and maybe that's where
Probably,
it's coming
yes.
from. But we didn't actually demo it. So it's another layer that you can use to get a view on whether the content is appropriate to various CEFR. It's certainly very advisable. I found when I create things to define a CEFR level in the learner profile, that will help hugely. And I mean, again, maybe touching back a little bit what was said earlier, it's still a human in the loop, and it's still about you looking at it and kind of going, okay, is that right, or is that right for the particular context in which the students are encountering this vocabulary? So a B2 word may be fine in a B1 course if it's something that has previously been taught in a chapter, for example. I don't know, Dave, if you've anything to add to that.
I'm not really, no. I mean, as you say, we have got this extra CFR validation for vocabulary. So when you click on the button, it will go through the text and it'll pick out it tries to identify what kind of CFR level you would expect the student, that vocabulary to appear for the student. But yeah, you certainly need to be there to check. And that's true with everything in AI. You can't, I mean, the whole thing about, well, Teachamatic too, is that when you create anything, it's not released automatically to students. The teachers and the content, well, not even the teachers, the content developers review it, and only when they're happy is it ever published. So nothing's actually published automatically to students. But yeah.
Yes, exactly. Thank you very much, both, and thank you everybody for your questions. Now, if you want to see Avallain Author that we looked at today, or Avallain Magnet, that was actually the topic of the previous webinar, in action, and you want to book a personalized demo, you can either scan the QR code that Stephen is showing right now, or I'm just dropping the link in the chat as well. So you just need to fill in this very quick form, and a member of the team, most likely Stephen, will be in touch to organize everything. And also, this is a monthly product webinar series, so we're happy to invite you to the next webinar that, as Dave mentioned earlier, is going to be about digital book and digital book experience courses. So is the 23rd of September, the same time of today. So again, you can either scan the QR code and complete your registration, or I'm also dropping the registration link in the chat if you want to do it directly from there. But don't worry, because all of these links, including also the link to connect with Stephen at the Frankfurt Book Fair, as well as the recording, will be sent in the email that we're sending next week as a follow-up of this webinar. And I think with this, we can make an end to today's session. So thank you very much once again for being with us today. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Dave. And see you all very soon.
Avallain, digital education solved.